Welcome to the ARES Strategic Mining Investor Presentation. Throughout today's recorded meeting, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please simply type in your questions at any time and press send. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and I'm sure the company will be most grateful for your participation. I'd now like to hand over to CEO James Walker. James, good afternoon.
Hi everyone, how's it going? Okay, great. Well, look, I'm very happy to run through this presentation very quickly and then take some questions and provide some answers following it. Let me bring up this thing in full. So I think it's always important just to start with what Fluorspar actually is. And the reason why is that we get asked still, even though we've been at this for quite a while and I've done a lot of these presentations, it's not heard about. And the reason why it's not heard about a lot is that the industry did get shipped overseas during the 90s as a result of China industrializing. And as a result, that very large US industry got shut down. So it's a critical mineral with strategic importance within the United States. And a critical mineral really refers to it is vital to the economic security of the country. And it's vital to the economic security of the country because it's involved in pretty much everything. It's aluminum, steel, hydrofluoric acid, fluorine, lithium-ion batteries, glass, cement, all of these different areas. It's from refrigeration units to air conditioning to microchips. It goes into pretty much everything. The only reason it's not more well known about is because that industry has been shipped overseas. And it remains actually I think the only non-metallic critical mineral that is 100% imported into the US. There's a big supply gap, and there is a big demand for it. And as a result, even against the global backdrop, China was one of the biggest producers in the world. It still is, but it's still a net importer now. It mined out its high-grade minerals, its high-grade fluorspar, and has since actually had to revert to sourcing high-grade fluorspar from international locations to meet its own domestic and construction needs. And if you know anything about China, it wants to construct buildings and steel, and it needs fluorspar to do it. And as a result, the price of fluorspar has been rising, and even these prices you're seeing in front of you now are probably low compared to what you could actually retail fluorspar now today, just given the few producers globally versus the fact that everybody needs this mineral for basically any sort of industrial operation. So ARES got started back in 2020, beginning of 2020, on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and later moved on to the CSE. It identified the Utah project back in 2019, I think it was. And originally, it was of interest because there was already an artisanal operation ongoing, and the grades were rich enough where the artisanal miners were able to put a shovel in the ground and put the fluorspar into a bag, and then take the bag and then just sell it directly to customers. Very rare in mining that anything like that exists at all. And we saw that actually with the right investment, the right equipment, and the right team, this was something we could turn into a large-scale industrial operation for a fraction of the cost that it would for a large mining operation. And what we then did after we identified it, we bought out the permitted mining, the mine, and then we bought out the district wherever there were fluorspar showings, and that took us close to 6,000 acres of fluorspar exhibiting land right across the Spore Mountain range to make it a district scale. And we also had to reach out to international producers of fluorspar for assistance. And because of those collaborations, that we were able to actually design or get the metallurgy done and design plants such as our lumps plant and flotation plant to create that large-scale industrial operation. And we bought both of those plants, and they're both on site now. And the lumps plant itself is actually finished construction. It is being commissioned right now. And it's running material at low levels through it already, with imminent production, thankfully, coming from that plant. And the flotation plant, which will produce the higher grade acid spar, already we are looking at government contracts to supply that material to rebuild the US's reservoirs of product that the Clinton administration sold off. So how do we really get there? I mentioned first locating the project. After we located the project and we realized that we had something quite special here, we immediately went in and moved into a process of raising some initial money. Typically how any sort of exploration project begins. We raised money for drilling, exploration, assaying, metallurgy, geophysics, and we began to put together a picture of how the operational operation would look like once we developed ourselves into a full manufacturing operation. Things were delayed quite substantially just because of COVID, but when we emerged out of that, there was a lot of government, both state and federal support that was allocated to us. We were awarded a manufacturing bond by the state of Utah, specifically for developing internal state industry. We also were awarded money from the USDA that allowed us to then go and buy a 40-acre industrial site, probably the only industrially zoned site in the whole area. That 50 acres allowed us to have warehousing and then begin actual construction process of pouring concrete in preparation for the plant. Because we were trying to build back something of national infrastructure importance, it did attract enough interest to acquire even more funding from the state of Utah and to facilitate some of the private placements we were also doing at the same time. All of that fed into big mine works, building ramp installations, adits, installing ventilation systems, building ponds, getting water permits, buying heavy machinery, bringing on mining staff and contractors, building the lumps plant. We got very, very busy almost straight away, and there's been a lot of construction since then. We've raised enough. We then got a substantial amount of interest from potential off-takers, and we began putting together commitments to supply both metallurgical grade and then later acid grade when we finally completed negotiations that have been very ongoing with the DoD for about a year to solidify a IDIQ contract to supply up to about 200, a contract with a ceiling limit of about $250 million to rebuild the national stockpiles of acid spar within the country, which are again very important for defense purposes and long-term strategic planning for the company to make sure you protect domestic industry if it's ever threatened. As we advance through that this year, we've done an enormous amount of construction and commissioning on the plant to get it ready in time, with the anticipation that obviously this year we want to be able to start selling product and shipping it. And we're thankfully in that commissioning stage now where we have reached that point where we can begin finally shipping product out. How it'll look in the future is as we begin selling and becoming more self-sufficient on the selling of metallurgical lumps to our partners, which they require the product predominantly for the steel industry. We'll complete the flotation plant construction and then begin manufacturing the acid spar, the higher grade product with a sort of a higher premium for the general industry and also the DoD contract as well, which we've committed to. So who are we within our company? Myself, I'm the Chief Executive Officer in the company. I have a background in mining engineering, mechanical engineering, and nuclear engineering. I have worked on building mines such as lithium operations, silver operations in the past. Victoria and Tom, who are part of my team as well, they have extensive experience with mining operations, especially juniors. And now Tom also has experience with taking junior mining operations into actual producing operations, revenue generating actual mining, which for a lot of exploration companies is a big step that they never quite make. Bob Lee is worth a mention as well, as he was one of the individuals that we reached out to when we realized that a lot of the expertise around fluorspar within the United States had been shipped out. And he ran fluorspar operations in countries like Thailand, and was able to help us substantially with our metallurgical work and plant design. And some of the plant equipment that we've got still trace themselves to Bob. And he's been enormously useful, I think, for that expertise which we were missing as we began our venture and realized that we were almost rebuilding an industry from scratch. So the first targets we're going to have, the Lost Sheep, is the actual mining area, which is fully permitted out, and we've built all of the mine work infrastructure there necessary to get tens of thousands of tons of material out of the ground. That was the actual first target when we realized that was fully permitted and it was grandfathered in, and we could just upscale the operation. But what we realized is that there was a bit of a history, and because the fluorspar price had been killed by that cheap Chinese product that had flooded the market, a lot of these adjacent claims to the Lost Sheep, they had lapsed because people had just moved on. It wasn't economic anymore to have any sort of substantial mining operation in fluorspar. Now, they either died off or let their claims lapsed, and that whole district scale became available. So when we were targeting this particular mine, we realized that the entire district was basically available, all the way down to the Bell Hill claims, which is almost 8-9 miles of contiguous showings going all the way down the mountainside. So we staked all of them, and part of our exploration work did involve doing geophysics, sampling, metallurgical work across that district, so we could identify secondary and tertiary mine operations post Lost Sheep. And so we got that plan built out. But we wanted to make this a long-term operation where we move down that mountain, taking advantage of what's already been built out, and obviously creating the product necessary to feed into our plants, which are pretty substantial systems capable of throughput of quite a large amount of fluorspar. So that consolidated district should give us a long operational history. So the Lost Sheep mine, which I spoke about just now, the one we started with, when we started the drilling operation, we realized that there was a significant amount of fluorspar still at depth. And the reason why a lot of it had never really been accessed is that because it had all been artisanally mined, the vast majority of the fluorspar at this particular property had been missed, because the way artisanal miners had been operating was to look for fluorspar showings at surface and follow them down. And as we began to drill down, we found enormous bodies of fluorspar there. And as we sampled them, we realized the grade was very high and would need a particular amount of high amount of processing to create sort of a good product. And it indicated as well that because the grade was very high and didn't need a lot of processing, the OPEX would be relatively low. And so we believe we had a very good operation on here. Because of the nature of the non-contiguous ore bodies, we realized that an underground operation was going to be very necessary. And so we built a corkscrew ramp installation deep into the Lost Sheep area that can intersect the ore body at different levels. And this allowed us obviously to go even further deeper than any artisanal miner had ever been able to go before, but access a lot of real untapped, huge quantities of high-grade fluorspar, which had just sat dormant for thousands of years, effectively waiting for ARES to come along and mine it. But the nice part is that while China was mining its high grade, this was sitting here, and the only other properties that were developed around the world were also very high grade systems. So now that the world is in a position where a lot of the fluorspar is being sourced and developed at the moment is much lower grade than what we have available to us naturally, just essentially because it got preserved. So we're in a very advantageous position in terms of the operation of the reactor, of the fluorspar itself. One also additionally interesting thing that we discovered as we began doing our metallurgical work is that co-embedded with a lot of the fluorspar was some very interesting minerals. Chief amongst them, I think, was the gallium, which and the germanium too, but the gallium was coming in higher concentrations than the germanium. But the gallium itself was particularly interesting because we realized that there was a potential to utilize our flotation plant to make a sort of a concentrate that we could ship to a refinery for further processing into a final product. So we're working through some of the metallurgy at the moment with groups like Idaho State University and the AMES National Lab that have even come up with their own funding to help us with this metallurgical endeavor, because there is, again, a demand for these minerals. China has cut off deliberately, as part of economic warfare with the US, supply of these systems to impede the tech industry, and they remain a sort of a blue sky potential for us in the future, which we will look to develop as we build out the acid spar flotation plant system. And the nice part is that we are mining now. I mean, that's the good part about this. It's taken a while to get here, but the mine is operational. We've got the mining team in place. They are taking ore out of the ground. In that bottom right-hand picture, that massive pile of equipment material is high-grade fluorspar. I think we've got something like 12,000 tons we've put out of the ground, and it's just sitting there waiting for it to be trucked over to the lumps plant to begin processing into metallurgical lumps ready for industry. And that top right-hand picture is obviously the guys carving their way into a fluorspar pipe to begin removing material to surface. We have a great team down there. They've worked incredibly hard on this. We created essentially an underground labyrinth of tunnels that intersect fluorspar all over the place. And even better, as we've been mining this out, we've even discovered quite a lot of new deposits that we weren't aware of before, just to further lengthen the operational mine life of the Lost Sheep project. I think I'm very pleased to have arrived here. We started stockpiling a number of months ago, and I think we've reached a point now where it's just incumbent on us to start moving that product over to the mine and making those metallurgical lumps for industry. The only other part of it is that, all the heavy machinery has been bought, but we do have sorry, you can go to that next slide. We do have a two-plant strategy with this as well. I have mentioned both the metallurgical grade, referred to as METSPAR, and the acid grade. Not actually acid in any way, but it got the name because it was being used in the manufacture of hydrofluoric acid, and you need that high grade for. Oh, sorry. Okay. The METSPAR plant is ready to go. The lumps we have created, that the plant is capable of manufacturing, they earn a bit of a premium because they come in a form which the steel industry finds more palatable for their processes. We were able to meet the spec of a lot of customers that want the product as well, so we know that's good to go. And obviously they're just waiting on us. They've been waiting on us very patiently for quite a while, because a domestic source of fluorspar is obviously incredibly beneficial to domestic industry, especially the steel industry, which needs in the region of 20 pounds of fluorspar per ton of steel that gets produced. And if you think there's 80 million tons of steel that gets produced in the US on an annual basis, you need a lot of METSPAR. And our flotation plant, which we've bought in full and we've delivered out all of the components to site. The nice part about this second plant is that it will not take as long to construct as the metallurgical plant, because a lot of the metallurgical plant doubles up as the initial process for the acid spar plant and readies it for the flotation cells. So we can bring that plant online, fortunately, a lot quicker. And a lot of the infrastructure is shared as a result, not to mention the fact that the mine is already built out now, creates a much finer powder form of high-grade material that's over that 97%, and it does command a premium. And even that pricing there is almost certainly out of date now, and it would retail for probably significantly more than that now, domestic source of fluorspar for industry. That will go predominantly to things like hydrofluoric acid, fluorine, refrigeration units, those kind of items. And just to give you a bit of a sense of the scale of this, even these pictures are a bit old, but all the electricals are installed. The lumps plant, every piece of equipment is installed now. It's all running in tandem with itself now. A lot of this infrastructure that you can see, certainly on that bottom left picture, that's infrastructure that doubles up to be able to be utilized by the flotation plant as well, even though this plant here is predominantly for the lumps plant. It did take us quite a while to get all the electrical systems in place, belt conveyors, the steel, the fabrication, the piping. It is a big operation, probably admittedly bigger than we first anticipated, but we have significant industrial capacity now to produce a lot of product for industry. And the plan now, once this is on, will be to ramp up the feed material that goes into this so we can produce more product for industry. So on the customer front, the Kramer Group, the Kramer ARES Contour, they've been a partner with us for quite a while. We have some announcements that go back quite a way with them. They've been very patiently waiting for us to come online. They're still sending people to visit our site almost on a monthly basis at the moment in anticipation for being able to take this product. We are sending them material that they're obviously running past their customers. And we're now beginning to coordinate things like rail coordination, loading, destination ports, just in preparation for when we get going. And we have this offtake agreement, this MOU in place with them to provide. And again, their predominant customer is the metal industry, the steel industry. Again, big demand, and there's a lot of insecurity created around the industry by not having this Fluorspar available. If you have to make steel without it, there's not many other derivatives that you can substitute in for it. And if you don't have the Fluorspar, you're looking at a product that might not be nearly as good a quality and might cost you significantly more because you don't create that individually tailored flux that Fluorspar can provide. And a big announcement we had much earlier in the year was that we had been through a due diligence and scrutiny period with the Department of Defense. And finally, we did sign an agreement with the Pentagon for the supply of acid spar, so that higher grade material. In order to get there, we obviously had to provide a very high degree of confidence that we would be successful in the production of acid spar for the Department of Defense. And the nice part about this is that it is a stockpiling operation, so we can just run trucks from our processing facility right through to where they do stockpile the minerals, which is in fairly close proximity to our actual operations. So the contract will be expected to run for about 5 years from first production, and we should be able to start shipping product to them next year. To be honest, if we wanted, we could probably drive all of our product into this offtake agreement with the Department of Defense and have a very comfortable next few years just supplying them with product that they need to rebuild the national stockpiles of Fluorspar. So we are a CSE listed company up here in Canada, but we also do list on the OTCQX and actually in Germany on the Frankfurt Exchange as well. Market cap sitting somewhere in about the 70 millions. We are looking at potentially an uplist in the future as well to the NASDAQ, and we actually have started the process to begin that uplist process. Again, it makes it a lot easier for US investors to get involved. A number of brokerage firms do have difficulty with pink sheets stocks in the US, like OTCQX. So when we do complete that uplist process, hopefully this year, we will get hopefully see a corresponding beneficial effect in the share prices. More US or brokerages are allowed to trade our stock, which has been rather inhibiting, I think, for the growth of the company, particularly given it's a very unique US story. And we are the only permitted Fluorspar operation in the US as well. And certainly there's there's nothing, I think, on the horizon close to producing fluorspar in the same way that we are in any meaningful capacity. So we have a massive jump on the market, and the only competitors we would have that we would see would be international, and even then we have a much greater advantage given the domestic nature of our product.
Great. James, maybe I could just jump back in just to give you a small pause. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just using the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just while the company take a few moments to review your questions submitted already, I'd just like to remind you recording this presentation along with a copy of the slides will be available post today's meeting. And let me first off by just apologising for our slight delay this morning. Paul, as you can see, you've had a number of questions that are both pre-submitted and submitted through today's meeting. Thank you to everybody for your engagement. If I may just hand back to you just to moderate us through the Q&A, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, James, for going through that presentation with us. We know this is a particularly busy period of time for you right now. So we do really appreciate you taking the time out to keep us all updated on how things are progressing and the next steps for the business. Also want to say thank you to all of the audience that have come tonight and for submitting the questions ahead of time. We do have quite a lot of questions that we're going to try and get through, but if we haven't been able to answer your question, please bear with us. We will try and get a response to you and an update as soon as possible after tonight. So James, busy period.
Yeah, extremely. So busy. I think I was a couple of minutes late to this call.
That's okay. We'll forgive you. We'll forgive you. We'll just jump straight into the questions. I know everybody's pretty eager to get some answers. The first one I think really is focusing on the ramp up of production that was announced with the target of August 15th. How is that looking right now, and are we on track, or is there any delays that we should be made aware of?
Like I would have been very cautious about any date that we released unless I had a high confidence we could do it. So thankfully, we're not going to miss the date. Like the commissioning has gone great, and so we can start putting product into the plants and actually start producing that product. But the commissioning this last month has been going very, very nicely. I think the big obstacles we faced a few months ago when we realized a lot of the electricals needed to be done, we've got all of that done, and we have this incredibly comprehensive electrical system that we've built out at the processing site. It's easily sufficient now to house the flotation system electronics as well. We have some great electrical engineers as well that we brought in to build all this out. And as I said, I never expected it to be this comprehensive a manufacturing operation. It sort of ballooned in that respect, but now that we built it out, like the capacity potential we've got is much more elevated than originally planned.
Yeah, makes sense. So do you have an idea roughly of when the company can start to expect its first revenues from the Metspar lumps?
So there's going to be the sale, and then there's the payment period that will come like 30 days or 60 days after that. But with product going in, in a few days, and actual first lumps being produced, we can start actually sending product next month.
Fantastic.
We've got to that point now. Everything's built. The mine is built. The mining operations are built. It's all permitted. We've got the generators on site. We've got the water system there. It's effectively there's nothing really stopping us now from actually producing that first product, apart from just completing this commissioning phase, putting product in there, and then beginning to ship it.
Congratulations, James. I know you don't drink, but surely there's got to be a bottle of something popped that day.
Yeah, like I some points of this project, I thought about taking up drinking.
Well, do you have an idea of the short and long term revenue projections once things are starting to ramp up? How does the next year to 3 years look?
Yeah, like obviously there's always a bit of a ramp up period when you start. I'd imagine initially. The nice thing about the plants is that they can manufacture well in excess of what we expect we can actually drag out of the mine. So in a way, the limitation isn't on our production amount. It's just how much we can get out of that ramp installation system. But even then, once we, give us several months to optimize that operation of getting it out of the ramp, moving it to the Delta site, processing those lumps and putting them on the back of a rail car. We can be looking at, getting up to, thousands of tons on an annual basis, like quite easily. We'll be looking, I want to get up to a point where we're, generating somewhere between $20 to $30 million in revenue before the flotation plant is coming online, and then bringing that online for that additional bonus. I do, in the long run, want to open up secondary or tertiary portals just to allow for extra throughput to put into the mine, and then we could see that revenue range increase quite substantially. So, and the prospects are there. Like, we know there's fluorspar all over our district. And so the question now is, obviously we can open up additional access to pipes through that existing ramp installation, but we still might be limited somewhat on what we can remove from the pipe, just given that it's one ramp, and then loaders and dozers can only go in one at a time down this sort of this pipe installation. But additional ramps could mean doubling, and 3 ramps could mean tripling of the potential output we could get from the mine site, and the plant could take all of it too. We don't even need to run the plant 24 hours. We can run that as a normal manufacturing operation on normal working hours and shut it down for the weekend so everyone can go home, and it would still be able to churn through tens of thousands of tons on an annual basis.
You said there, I know this is probably a goal, but 20 to 30 million. Do you think that is attainable within the next 3 years?
Oh no, yes, certainly within the next 3 years. There should be no problem with that at all. I mean, I'm obviously trying to avoid giving any sort of near-term estimates, but I expect it to be substantially earlier than 2 to 3 years.
Great. Well, that's exciting news. And just about those secondary and tertiary targets that you have you made any steps to start permitting or opening up those mines?
Yes, so we did buy our own drilling system, so we've got that in place too, and we also did some satellite imagery over the top of the mountain. Now this is to create new mines, so almost separate from the lost sheep. But in addition to that too, is that we've realized that there's substantially more fluorspar on the lost sheep property than we originally realized. So it opens up a lot more access to material. The constraint there again is that it's how much we can actually just remove from that ramp installation system. But there's substantial amounts of fluorspar in the vicinity of the lost sheep mine too, which would, if we build secondary and tertiary ramp installations over the next several months, we could just open up enormous quantities of fluorspar additional, and then run a very big operation. And the nice part about it is that the demand is large enough that even if we upscale quickly, they would eat up all of our demand. At the moment, I think the main disappointment from customers is that we can't produce more, and it's a nice situation to be in. Facing that as your constraint. Build up as fast as you can. We'll take it. Is a very nice position to be in.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have an idea roughly of the percentage of US metspar demand that ARES would be able to meet?
So initially, it's going to be a very small percentage. I mean, if you think about something like, we touched on it earlier on the presentation that the US utilizes something like 20 pounds of fluorspar per ton of steel, when there's 18 million tons of steel produced on an annual basis. The steel industry would eat up the fluorspar by itself. That's not considering things like uranium enrichment, hydrofluoric acid, fluorine, lithium-ion batteries, cement, glass industries, refrigeration units, Teflon. All of these industries require quite a lot of fluorspar, and we can't. The steel industry alone would eat up more than we can produce initially, and still need more than our excess production could manage. So in terms of raw products, I know that the US imports something like 600,000 tons on an annual basis, but that's still a underestimate of what it actually needs, because that 600,000 tons is raw fluorspar products, no downstream products that are used in like uranium enrichment, like uranium hexafluoride, or microchip manufacture, or derivatives that are used in things like fluorine production. It's really in the order of millions of tons that are needed on an annual basis. So in raw imports alone, we're less than 10% at full capacity. In terms of actual fluorspar requirements within the country, I mean, it's probably like a couple of percent of what we can produce of what the US actually needs.
Yeah, sounds like you're gonna have to put your prices up.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And specifically about the interest in your target customers, I know you did touch on this a little bit in the presentation, but what other interests are you seeing in the product? And then specifically in regards to Kramer ARES Contour, can you share any details on the MOU or the potential contract that you have with them?
So in terms of other customers outside of them, I would say enrichment of uranium is, oh, sorry, not really enrichment of uranium, the feed material that goes into enrichment of uranium. So when you have yellow cake, the next process in that supply chain is to make uranium hexafluoride, which is the feed material for uranium for enrichment. That goes into making fuel for civil nuclear reactors, for submarines, for aircraft carriers, for weapons. There's a big demand for that material to feed into that process. And obviously this is excluding what metallurgical grade that Kramer is interested in is after. Internationally, I would say we're getting a lot of interest from Japanese customers and Korean, because obviously they don't have the sort of the depth of resources that the US and Canada have, and for that reason, they're looking to try and de-risk their industries, particularly their heavy industries. They still have aluminum and steel production. They still have heavy chemicals that they need to manufacture. A lot of these all require fluorspar, and so they're after high quality products from a stable country source. And so a lot of the international interest that we're getting is coming from these Southeast Asian countries to do with their heavy industry. Again, huge level of interest. That's again, like, even no matter how much we ramp up, even if by some miracle we could meet all of the US demand, there's this international demand that's still out there. As everyone looks to try and de-risk their long-term industry, like heavy industry, by securing long-term offtake contracts. So it's way in excess of what we can produce. So.
Great, good problem to have. And just on that Kramer ARES Contour, are you able to share any more details on that specific contract?
So they are. I think the most pertinent thing with them is that they are more interested in the metallurgical grade, because they are more a materials broker for that particular type of industry, steel, those kind of. I think those are the predominant customers they're looking to focus on. So the way this would work, I think, with the agreement with them is that we would load up our rail cars. We do have our own rail spur. They would take ownership of the material once it was loaded into the rail car system. And then they would be responsible for shipping it to the customer base at that point. Again, very nice operation for us. We have our own mining operation. We have our own processing. We just need to deposit onto the Union Pacific rail spur. Then they take it and deliver it from there. And yeah, they would be catering mostly towards US industry, US domestic industry.
Okay, thanks for that. And just to deviate slightly now towards the flotation plant. Again, I know you spoke on this a little bit during the presentation, but when do you expect the works on that to start? And do you have an idea of completion on that yet? And then there's just a side question on this regarding the permit from Millard County Planning Commission. Do you think that would affect the progress at all?
Well, I don't know about the second question yet, but like, Actually, with that second question, which I don't know which permit they're referring to. Like we've got the water quality permit, we've got the discharge permit, we got the what else? I don't think we're missing anything on that. So maybe that's just maybe that's old news. But for instance, we're happy to publish those permits as well, so everyone can see them, that we've got everything in place that we need. Air quality, I think that's all taken care of on that front. What was the first part of the question?
Just the status of the flotation plants, and do you have an idea roughly of when you think it might be operational?
Yeah, so like obviously work is continuous. So as the idea here is that as the lumps plant completes, we just move the crews straight over to the construction of the flotation plant. Already with the flotation plant, the design around the fabrication of the building is being done at the moment. So the flotation plant itself is not like the lumps plant. It can't sit outside exactly, just because of the nature of the flotation cells and the water usage. But that has already started. A lot of the infrastructure that the flotation plant needs is shared with the lumps plant. So effectively, you've got the lumps plant, and then you're creating an offshoot process that comes off it. So it's arguable that a lot of the flotation plant process has already been constructed and completed. I do want to have that flotation plant up and running in the first half of next year, so we can start sending product to the DoD. We do have time on our sides with that contract, but I want to get going with it and start honoring it early, and beat expectations on delivery schedules. It is a big contract too, and there are some years where we will have to produce a lot to meet sort of their 5-year schedule. Pays to get ahead and be producing a lot for them, so we can get those stockpiles up to a sufficient level. And the nice part is, because it has an elevated ceiling in excess of the original order, we can actually produce more than was originally envisaged, and claim more money in the bank from the sale of material to the DoD. But yeah, like the answer really is as soon as possible. I think everybody would answer that. But fortunately, a lot of the work has been done and the infrastructure is done, and it's already a permitted site. With the water permits are all in place already. So
fantastic. I know we only have a few more minutes, so I'm just going to ask some shorter questions just to try and get through this quickly. Just in regards to fundraising, do you foresee any need for further funding this year?
I think we're in a very comfortable position at the moment. From where we are, and we got revenues coming in, we should be a self-sustaining company fairly quickly, which is a nice place for any exploration company to be. Actually, we won't even be an exploration company anymore. We'll be a manufacturing company. We do want to do an uplist. There might be some financing related to that process as we transition from OTC to NASDAQ. But I think we're in a nice position at the moment where we're not worried. It's really just an execution phase now that we're in.
Okay. You touched on the NASDAQ listing. Do you have an ETA on roughly when you would expect that to happen? And then there is a question on the minimum share price requirement for the NASDAQ. So is ARES considering a reverse split in order to meet that criteria?
So the NASDAQ listing, we've been at this now for a few months, just going back and forth with the process. We've had comments already submitted, got the second round in, revised documentation. I mean, I would really like to have it completed within the next couple months and get this going and get rid of the distraction, because it is a lot of work and all that paperwork getting this done. And on top of commissioning the mine, it's like everything's coming at once. So the next couple of months, it'll be nice to get this out of the way and get trading on the NASDAQ, especially as a manufacturing company with government contracts, with revenue coming in the door. Like I imagine we'll have, at a time when critical minerals are really under focus, we should have a very nice market response, given all the things we've got in our favor. Plus, we're the only producer of fluorspar in the country. And the other thing about a rollback is it's not necessary. So the way that it would work is that you have something called an ADR. I've forgotten what it stands for at the moment, but the ADR means it's pegged. So the Canadian price does not change. You don't need a rollback to create that minimum amount that the NASDAQ requires to list, like $4 or $5 or whatever it is. You just peg it. So the US share price could be whatever it is, $8, $9, and the Canadian price would be as it is, and nobody gets rolled back who has that stock. So we have put that ADR in place again to protect shareholders. I know everyone gets annoyed when they get rolled back. And unfortunately, when people do uplist to the NASDAQ, they do get rolled back to try and meet that minimum. We've deliberately put in place a mechanism, the ADR mechanism, so they don't get rolled back as part of that NASDAQ uplisting.
Thank you for explaining that, James. I think we're out of time, unfortunately. I know there's a lot of other questions. Again, we will try and get those answered and distributed to everybody. But just before we end, James, any closing comments that you wanted to make?
No, like I think we've got a wonderful shareholder base. Like, I know a lot of you. You've been stuck with us for a long time, waiting for us to get to this stage. We finally got there. So I hope you're as relieved as I am. No one ever said mining was easy, but what's nice is that there's so few companies that ever get to this stage where you come out of exploration and get into mining, and I see why. It is an enormous challenge, and to get to that phase, it's going to be very nice for the shareholders to get an uplift and to see some success, and to basically benefit from their investment and their support of the company over the previous years as we built this. I think that's the main thing. Is that I'm very appreciative of people's patience and just staying with the story until we got to this point.
That's great. Paul, thank you very much indeed for moderating the Q&A. James, thank you for taking the time to present and give us those answers today. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you so you can provide your feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company. On behalf of the management team of ARES Strategic, thank you very much indeed for your time, and wish you all a good rest of your day.